Hey everybody, it's Greg here again with RC Driver, and this is our Get Into RC series. This is episode number 11, and for episode 11, I'm going to talk about the electronics and the names of the parts of the electronics. As you can see here, I have a lot of different servos and speed controllers and motors and radios, and back here I've got batteries and chargers and stuff like that. So I just want to go over all the names of the parts so you know those as well. We talked about the chassis, we talked about suspension, we talked about drivetrain, so it's only natural that I go and talk to you guys about the different parts of electronics as well. And actually next week what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about nitro parts. I'm going to go over some engine stuff and tune pipes and radio trays and fuel tanks and stuff like that. We'll just go over all the parts so you guys know exactly what parts are on your cars. So when you walk into a hobby shop or you go online looking for the part that you need, you're able to find it easy. All right, you should know the routine by now. I'm going to head over to the workbench. We're going to talk about all the different parts of electronics. To start off our discussion on electronics, naturally I would start with a radio system, and this is a radio system right here. This is a high-tech radio, and it's also called a transmitter, and then this is the receiver over here. But I've actually talked about radio systems in detail in our Get Into RC series in episodes number 2 and 3. So I'll put a link to those up top, and we'll move right along to servos. So I've laid out a few different servos here so we could talk about the different components. And this right here, this is a high-end servo. This is a ProTech RC servo, but it's a nice unit to talk about all the different components that make up a servo. So let's start off right here with the main body of the servo. This is the servo case, and typically servo cases are made up of 3 different sections. So we've got a lower plate of the case, we've got the midsection of the case, and we got the top case here. And on the top case, we have the servo ears, and that's where you mount the servo to your vehicle, whether it's in a radio tray or just a standalone servo mount. Those are your mounting points right there. So this is a high-end servo. This servo is made out of aluminum. It has an aluminum case. Servos also come with composite or plastic cases like you see here. We'll talk about why that servo is pulled apart in a minute there. But this is a standard size servo. So this goes into 10 scale cars and 8 scale cars, and servos are made in all different sizes. So with a smaller scale car, let's say an 18 scale car, you may have a mini or micro servo in there, or in a large scale car you would have a large scale servo in there, so it'd be much larger. But this is a standard size servo. And then this right here, I pulled this out because this is a short standard size servo. This is more of a compact size. So servos come in all different sizes. I've pulled the servo here apart so we could talk a little bit more about what's inside of a servo. So as you can see here, these are the servo gears. There's a number of gears that make up the gear train inside the servo. And then in the main body of the case, there's typically a motor. Actually, I think the motor's over on this side in the servo, and there is a electronics board. Typically, you wouldn't get involved in that. That's something your service repair center would have to handle for you if you had a bad servo. But servo gears can be replaced, and that's what these are right here. This is the part of the servo you really have to be concerned about right here when installing a servo in your car. This is the output shaft. And on the output shaft, there are these little teeth called splines. And let me grab this servo over here. You can see it a little bit better on this metal output shaft. And that's another thing. The gears are different between servos. So this right here is a plastic gear servo. Inside here, there are all metal gears. So as you upgrade to better servos, you'll get better gears, and that's something to consider when changing out servos. But anyway, back to the splines here. This is something that you really need to know about. Different servo manufacturers have different splines. So there are 23-tooth splines, 24-tooth splines, and 25-tooth splines. So when you're picking out your servo and you have to adapt it to your car and use a proper servo horn. That's what this is right here. This is a servo horn. This is what goes on to the top of the servo output shaft. You have to make sure that the spline tooth matches between your horn and your output shaft. If they don't, the servo horn won't exactly fit on there. If you even try to push it on, you'll still have a problem. It may strip out later. They need to be the same tooth count in order for them to work properly. Just to finish off some of the discussion here on servos, as you can see inside here, there is a bushing. This is the output bushing. Sometimes it's a bearing, and sometimes it's a plastic bushing. But that is really the makeup of the servo right here. We have these servo wires and this is often called the servo lead. And the servo lead is made up of 3 different wires. We have a negative wire here, we have a positive wire, and then we have the signal wire, and they run down to the servo plug, and this is what's plugged into your receiver. Now we can move on to motors and speed controllers. And as you can see, I got a pretty big assortment here to discuss with you. So we'll start off with the basic stuff right here. This is a canned motor, and you'll find these type of motors in a lot of ready-to-run vehicles. And they're called can motors because this is the motor can here. It makes up a lot of the motor that you could see physically from the outside. We've got a bushing down at the bottom. This is a motor bushing. This is the motor shaft. And the motor shaft runs inside into the motor itself and attaches to the armature. And you can kind of see inside the armature is made up of a number of wires and some metal plates inside. And also inside the can are magnets. And we'll get into a discussion of how motors work later on down the road, but that just gives you a general idea. And then this is the end cap of the motor, solder tabs, and the wires with bullet plugs on this particular motor that go towards the speed controller. Now that is a closed can motor. Now this is a brushed motor right here. And I had to dig into my archives here to find an older brush motor because everything is mostly moving to brushless nowadays. But this motor here is a good example of what a brushed motor is. So here we have the can again, we have the motor shaft, we have the armature inside, magnets are inside, and then this is called the end bell right here. So the end bell has a positive side to it, often indicated by either a plus sign. Sometimes they use red paint, or in this case there is a red heat sink on here. And then there's the negative side as well. These are called the brush hoods on the outside, and those are the casings for the brushes. These are the brush springs, and I'm going to pop this off so I can show you what the brush looks like inside here. That is a motor brush. Okay. This particular motor has ball bearings in there, and you can kind of see that through the top. And these are called capacitors, and these are the solder tabs. So that's what makes up a brushed motor. Moving along, this is an example of a brushed speed controller. A brushed speed controller can easily be identified by having 2 plugs that go over to the motor, and then we have a battery plug right here. This is the heat sink of this particular speed controller. We have an on-off switch. We have the speed controller case. And this particular speed controller here has movable tabs that allows you to program it. And we'll get into programming at a later date, but there's a lot of different things to talk about as far as programming goes. And then we have our lead wire again with our negative, positive, and signal, and then the plug. So this is kind of what a brush speed controller looks like. Ready to runs will have bullet plug ends on the end. So these are the female side of the bullet plug. This is the male side of the battery. We'll talk more about plugs in a minute. I have a bunch of different plugs for the charger when we get to that part of this episode. But right now I'm going to move on to speed controllers. And so this right here is a sensorless speed controller from Castle Creations. So these are your battery leads right here. And as you can see, these do not have a connector on it. Some speed controllers, you'll have to solder on your connector. So just be aware of that. But we have the heat sink. We have the case of the speed controller. And then here we have our input leads for the motor. There'll be 3 wires. So that's how you could tell the difference between a brushless system that we have here and the brush system that we have over there. There's always 3 wires with a brushless system. And really after that, everything's much similar. Again, battery leads, on-off switch, and then the signal wires here. That's what a sensorless system looks like, and this is what a sensored system looks like. The main difference here is we have a wire here that will run out to the motor, to the motor's sensor. And so this is a sensor wire right here. This is a sensor port, and all the sensor ports look a little bit different depending on the speed controller. This particular speed controller right here has a cooling fan, so that is something to note as well. So there are a lot of different styles of speed controllers and shapes, sizes, different types of voltages that they can handle. But we'll get into that detail later. Again, we're just going over parts here and what the names of the parts are, so we'll talk about it more later. And so these are different motor types here. So this is a sensorless motor right here. There is no input for a sensor wire. So here we have the leads that go out to the speed controller, those 3 ports that I showed you before. We've got some bullet plug ends on there. So those get plugged into the speed controller. The motor is much different from a brush motor. So we don't have that brush hood there. We don't have any brushes inside. what we have here is a 3-piece can. So we've got the lower part of the can, we have the center of the can, and we have the end plate, we have the motor shaft. We will talk about specifically about the makeup of a brushless system later on down the road. Again, just going over parts here. And a sensored system is much similar to a sensorless, but what we have here is a plug for that sensor wire to go into. And inside there is a sensor. And again, we'll go over that some other time when we get into more details of censored and sensorless systems. That's a whole nother episode. But those are the parts of a brushless system right there. And that's the parts of all the different types of motors and speed controllers. Give you a general idea of what the makeup is. All right, let's move on to batteries next. Batteries. There's a lot of batteries out there, all different shapes and sizes of batteries. So we'll give you just a general understanding of the different styles there are out there. And again, some of the different names for the different areas of the batteries and the different parts of the batteries. So what we have over here is a nickel metal battery. And this is from Traxxas. So this is what a battery looks like when it is a nickel metal battery. It is made up of different cells, and these are the cells here. These are actually called sub-C cells, and as you can see, this pack is made up of 7 cells, and it is in a shotgun style form. There are also side-by-side formats where all the batteries are laid out side by side. Particular battery right here has an end cap, plastic end cap on it, and it's shrunk wrap to hold it all together, and then it comes out here to the positive and negative wires, and we've got a battery plug out here. This is generally what a nickel metal battery would look like, all right? But what we're moving into nowadays is we have a lot of lithium polymer batteries. This is a lithium polymer battery right here, and as you could see, the battery is actually inside of a black plastic case. This is called a hard case, and then we've got the wires right here. These are your power wires. And this is the balance plug right here. So this is a balance lead that plugs into your charger. And what it does is balance charges or discharges the individual cells inside. And that is very important for maintenance. Again, that's another subject, another whole subject for another whole getting into RC video series. So we'll talk about that more later. But this gives you the makeup of a battery. And then this is a racing battery right here. So again, it's a hard case battery pack. As you can see, it doesn't have the leads on there. It has these bullet plug ports, and the bullet plug ports are different sizes depending on the type of battery that you have. Sometimes they're 4.5 millimeter, sometimes they're 5.5, and there's even 6.5 ports out there. This is what a general racing pack looks like. And then I picked these 2 packs out over here to show you the difference between hard case packs and soft case packs. So over here, we have a max amps hard case pack, and this is a soft case pack. And the hard case is a hard plastic case on the outside of the cells. And here you can see this is just shrink wrap on the cells itself. And you can kind of see the cells inside here that make up the battery. And here we have Life-E cells. And these are a different type of cell, a little bit safer to use. These are often used in receiver packs and transmitter packs, and they're used as main car packs as well. But as you can see here, this is another example of a soft case pack. It's just a shrink wrap around the outside of the cells. It's just another type of variation in battery that you can pick up for your vehicle. Now let's wrap up our electronics discussion with chargers. What I have here are a few different types of chargers. If you've ever purchased a ready to run, you may have seen chargers like this in the kit. So this is your basic AC wall charger, plugs into the wall. It's got the battery plug on there, and these take quite some time to charge up a battery, but that's what that is when you get a ready to run kit. Traxxas includes these DC style chargers right now and plugs into your car accessory plug, so you'd have to charge this in your vehicle, but these do charge a little bit quicker. There are power supplies available for this type of charger, but that is an example of a DC ready to run charger that would come with a kit. Now we get into a little bit more of a higher end charger, and there's tons of different types of chargers out there. So this is a multi-function charger. This charges a number of different types of batteries, from your LiPo battery to your nickel metal battery, and even some lead acid batteries. Some chargers do that as well. But as you can see, the charger has a number of different wires and stuff sticking out of the side, so I just got to move along here. So we have the power cord. This right here will plug into your AC outlet right here. Goes into the charger. It also has a DC option. Many chargers have a DC option, so you can use it off a power supply or a battery, like an automobile battery. And then we have the charger case right here. We've got like a start and stop button on this particular charger. We have a selector knob. We have an LCD readout screen. You can even see up top here there's a port for a fan. And then the main part I really wanted to talk about are the outputs here. So we have the positive and negative output of a charger. We have the balance output for the charger. Sometimes they have USB plugs here, so you could use it to update the programming of the charger, or some of them have USB out so you could charge your cell phone or other accessories. But over here, we have the balance board. Let's talk about that first. So this is what you use to balance your batteries when you have a LiPo or Li-Fi battery. This is a multi-balance board, so this pretty much does every battery out there, but that's generally what a balance board looks like. It has all these different plugs on here. And then we have our battery leads. And as you can see, there's all different types of battery leads out there, depending on the type of plug you have in your specific car. So here we have an EC3 plug. Here we have a Dean's plug. This is a receiver plug here. And on the opposite side, these are banana plugs, and that's what plugs into the output of the charger here. And then just one more thing I wanted to throw out while I had it here. I just got this in. This is a charger and power supply combo. So this is what a power supply would look like right here to supply power to a DC charger. So that's what a combo would look like there. And that's when you get into higher end chargers, they often need a separate power supply. And those are some of the names and terms that you're going to run across when you're talking about electronics in the RC hobby. Now, I know a lot of those things are very involved, and we have a lot more episodes planned coming up that's going to dive into a lot more detail about brushless systems, speed controllers, motors, batteries, servos, all that stuff. So make sure you click that subscribe button, that notifications button, so when we have more of those videos, you can improve your knowledge on RC. Now, next week, we're going to talk about nitro systems. So if you're a nitro guy getting into nitro, you're definitely going to want to check that one out. We'll see you next week.